I found that fungi produce the same spiking electrical activity as neurons do.
Something ancient is hiding beneath our feet, and scientists are only now realizing how powerful it really is.
These spikes are like classical action potentials. Now you can imagine each branching point of the mycelium produces neuron-like spikes.
What looks like simple fungus in forests and backyards is actually part of a massive underground network stretching for miles. These fungal systems send electrical signals, share information, and behave in ways that closely resemble the human brain. But here's where it gets disturbing. Researchers have discovered that these networks can interact with machines, and in some cases, control them. With the help of artificial intelligence, scientists are decoding this hidden language, and what they're uncovering suggests these organisms may be far more intelligent than we ever imagined. Decoding the spikes. If you thought the fungi are boring, then things are about to change drastically because, from the top, they look like nothing is going on. But deep underground, they don't just grow, but in fact, they communicate just like humans. Yes, that's right. Fungi are not just cleanup crews with the sole purpose of decomposing rot and turning it into soil. Instead, they are much more than that. Thanks to the groundbreaking discovery in 2022 by the British computer scientist Professor Andrew Adamatsky, everything changed. Andrew is based at the University of the West of England and directs the Unconventional Computing Lab. In the past few years, he and his group have explored computers that are not artificial, but rather exist in nature itself, aka the slime molds and amoebas. Out of all the things, these fungi intrigued Andrew deep enough to discover that they generate an electrical pulse. But was it just a natural phenomenon, or did it hold real meaning, like a hidden language? To find the answers, Adamatsky decided to experiment with 4 common species of fungi, including the ghost fungi, which can softly glow in the dark. Then there was enoki, which grew long and thin. He also picked the split-gill mushroom, which forms tough fan-shaped clusters. And lastly, he picked the caterpillar fungi, which surprisingly mimics insect prey. Once all the candidates were gathered, Andrew prepped their substrates using oat, peat, and rye. Then he used hair-thin differential electrodes and inserted them right into the growth medium or sporocarps, and hoped to catch every twitch or pulse generated by these fungi. Collecting this crucial data took a very long time, but it was definitely worth it as the spikes burst out, with several lasting for approximately 1 to 21 hours each. The amplitudes also increased significantly from just 0.03 to a staggering 2.1 millivolts. Then came the most strange and rare phenomenon that was recorded during this experiment, the isolated pops, because most of these electrical spikes were grouped into trains, creating a chain-like pattern. But having solitary spikes proved that these fungi could act individually. Another intriguing discovery that Andrew made was the short spikes that lasted for a brief period and were quickly over, but there were also the long drags that were prolonged. But what truly felt like a language were the bursts that were frequently repeated, indicating the fungi are forming structured communication. These results were absolutely shocking, but in reality it was just the beginning. Because when AI was brought into this experiment, the algorithms sifted the data, and what seemed like a chaos of electrical spikes. The AI managed to spot an order revealing up to 50 distinct patterns per species, creating a fully structured vocabulary with a core set of 15 to 20 signals that could be used over and over for certain communications. Ghost fungi gave the best results as they have the most diverse array of spike patterns, with each activity having the highest Lempel-Ziv complexity. Enoki, on the other hand, showcased a much higher frequency, but very low complexity, making it seem like a quick language with very few repetitive words. The most surprising data was collected from the split gill, as this mushroom managed to produce the longest spikes, indicating longer sentences that lasted for hours, and providing the highest complexity. For caterpillar fungi, Adamatsky noted that this fungus had a vocabulary size and spike duration, which sat right in the middle of the other species, and additionally cordyceps is known parasite. Its language had to be adaptable to other spices, which it did had the ability of doing, indicating how human-like these fungi are, as they can change their dialect based on the place where they're living in. Despite these jaw-dropping results, Andrew still needed to have a solid foundation to prove that these electrical pulses were actually a language, and for that, he applied the same math that is used to study the human speech, and the discovery was even more shocking as he discovered that these fungi follow a rule called Zipf's law, which is exactly the same pattern that is found in every human tongue, whether it's English or Swedish. To further explain this concept, take English for an example. It has common words like the or and, which are used all the time compared to most other words, which are used quite rarely. And this pattern is same for every other language, and that is what the AI analyzed in the mushroom signals. It found that exact same balance, suggesting that these pulses are definitely not random, but are well organized with proper grammar and vocabulary, just like in a real conversation. These plants are communicating with each other using electrical bursts, from alerting the rest of the network about where to find food, or how to move water during a drought, to literally sending warning signals when they are under attack by insects. This is a vast system that is truly awe-inspiring. The AI translation. Adamatsky did manage to detect these spikes with great precision, but they were still encrypted enough to give us statements that looked nothing more than gibberish, meaning it required extensive decoding for which machine learning stepped up. The AI began its procedure by turning those raw electrical bursts straight into binary strings, meaning it marked them with a 1 whenever it detected a spike, and 0 when it detected nothing but dead silence. This may look like a simple code, but in reality, it's a major leap towards discovering what actually goes on in a world that is not our own. Now that everything is simplified into zeros and ones, it's still far from a language that we can understand, so this is where the linguistic analysis came in. As mentioned earlier, the AI built a lexicon for these fungi by detecting up to 50 unique patterns per species. It's like a dictionary, but for mushrooms and spores. All the electrical bursts linked in patterns, which formed long sentences with many word orders, repeated several times across these recordings, indicating human-like behavior. These algorithms were studied even further, leading to the Lempel-Zeev complexity measured order, to find out whether these fungal trains even meant something or not by detecting the complexity in sentences. Take the pattern ababab, for example. It seems predictable with an A followed by a B and so on, but it's not always this simple. Sometimes a sentence is so long that it's repeated after hundreds of thousands of words, automatically taking the complexity level over the roof. But thanks to AI, it was proven that these signals are not random noise. They were highly organized and ranked, based on a clear hierarchy featuring the simple, quick bursts at the bottom, while at the top were long, intricate chains of signals. To detect a clear flow, the AI didn't just look at individual words or bursts, but rather looked at it like it's a conversation leading to the creation of a state transition graph. Thanks to this, it allowed the researchers to map out how each of these electrical bursts led to the next one, similar to a flowchart or a digital circuit. It created a whole path through which a communication channel is established and the information is transferred. The researchers realized that these fungi act like spiking machines, except for the split gill fungus, as its signals were not only extremely long, but were also twisted and highly complex, from sudden shifts to elaborate branches that looked like a highly sophisticated computer code, or in simpler words, a storyteller that liked to tell its story in deep detail. Out of all the species, the split gill acted the most unpredictably. The AI easily proved that these fungi are more human-like than we ever imagined. They have their own language and a very unique way of communicating that follows Zipf's law, a mathematical rule that was meant for humans, but surprisingly even applies to plants, and who knows what other species on our planet. But the question is, why are we discovering this now? After all, we had tools to catch electrical signals for quite some time. Well, the reason for this massive delay is the fact that our traditional neuroscience tools were designed to catch brain spikes that mostly happen within a millisecond or even less, while for the fungi, they showcase a much slower frequency, as they can talk for literally hours, and due to lack of that information up until now, our old tools looked for quick signals rather than these prolonged ones. But thanks to modern AI, we were finally able to detect these slow frequencies and recognize a distinctive rhythm in them that flowed underground like a mysterious, silent melody. Cornell's fungal robots. Those fungal spikes that the AI managed to decode to some extent turned out to be very useful. Fast forward to August 2024, the Cornell University engineers decided to put these signals to good use. A team from the Organic Robotics Lab, led by researcher Anand Mishra and Professor Rob Shepard, decided to publish their groundbreaking discovery in Science Robotics, showcasing how these living mushrooms could be used to act as a brain for artificial machines. They proved their discovery by turning king oyster mushrooms, or Pleurotus oryngii, into full-fledged living brains of what they called biohybrid robots, a remarkable fusion of mycelium directly onto the robot bodies, creating a connection between the fungus and the robot, which allowed the fungus to sense, think, and even move the machines all on its own. But the question is, how did they manage to create such an otherworldly invention? To find the answers, let's start from the beginning, when the team simply grew mycelium, the white thread-like root network of the mushrooms, which is responsible for carrying those electrical pulses that we discussed earlier. It's exactly the same as nerve cells in humans and animals that send signals from the brain to other body parts. Thanks to the mycelium's sophisticated structure, it was the perfect medium for sending signals to robots, so the team grew it right onto two types of robots. The first of these robots featured a flexible body with soft silicone spider-shaped legs, allowing it to crawl over the ground. The second robot featured a vehicle-like body as it rolled on wheels, allowing it to smoothly travel across flat surfaces. Once the mycelium was in position, the team used electrodes thinner than hair and inserted them into the mycelium without damaging the network. Just like any other electric signal, this system was also vulnerable to vibrations and electromagnetic noise. So to shield it against these factors, the team used special foil layers to keep signals clean and true. Once everything was set, the mycelium acted like a highly sophisticated nervous system, with the ability to generate the same electrical spikes that Adamatsky had discovered. But this time, these signals actually did something in real life, rather than staying silent and operating underground. The tests. To test this ingenious design, the team ran 3 key experiments to prove their fungus robots are highly capable. In the first test, they let the robots move naturally, without any outside input, leading to mycelium fire, its baseline spike patterns, and the robots responded as expected. Their legs flexed just in a continuous pattern, allowing them to move forward like a spider, or some might say like a starfish. On the second robot, the wheels turned smoothly on the roller, and the best part is that it's all being controlled by a fungus. No hidden motors, no pre-programmed code, nothing. It's all naturally generated electrical pulses, allowing these robots to come to life. As the first test turned out to be a complete success, they moved on to the second UV light test, which really showed how the fungus makes its choices. They used the UV light for a reason, as its wavelength could easily be sensed by the mushrooms, allowing them to spot danger or food when in the wild. But in a lab, this light could be used to study how the mycelium reacts within seconds when exposed. The biohybrid spider robot curled its legs tight when exposed to the light, causing it to switch its movement from a standard straight crawl to a much more evasive twist, indicating that the fungus wasn't just sensing the light. It was actually making a real-time decision to change its behavior and avoid a threat. On the other hand, the wheeled bot showed an even more remarkable result by slowing down and accelerating in the opposite direction, as if it were trying to run away and dodge the threat. This reaction alone gives scientists a way to control the fungus by manipulating it through UV light. Who would have thought that even plants get sacred? In the third experiment, the Cornell team tested the mycelium's ability to some extent by directly creating a bridge between computer commands and its physical action, just like how a robot is supposed to do. They started by injecting custom electrical signals directly into the mushroom's network, which allowed them to bypass the fungus's natural senses and gain control over the biohybrid system. Not to mention, it could be programmed, all thanks to the mycelium that passes the electricity through like a wire. This experiment once again showed remarkable results, as the spiderbot responded with great precision by executing tight, controlled loops, while the wheeled robot displayed zigzag patterns. Now here's the most intriguing part. This whole fusion displayed adaptability properties, meaning the mycelium demonstrated a state-dependent response, indicating that its internal biological state was heavily influenced by how the robot moved, whether in spider-like form or like a vehicle. The study's main focus was on the interface's reliability, proving how a small fungal brain could handle some really complex tasks that, if recreated using only tech, would require long programming scripts and several commands. But thanks to the fungi allowing the team to provide continuous instructions with an extreme level of accuracy and adaptability, this natural brain far exceeds what standard mechanical sensors could. Minimum brain attention. Now, as you can see, these robots have displayed a very smooth movement through the 3 experiments. Well, that's mainly because of a central pattern generator, or just CPG architecture, which is a control system that is directly inspired by how animal spinal cords manage the walking action without needing much of the brain's constant attention. And for this hybrid setup, the king oyster mycelium acted as that core processing hub. The mycelium received direct feedback from the robot's sensors and quickly adjusted its electrical spiking patterns in real time, allowing it to maintain a smooth balance and speed while traveling. But why did researchers specifically choose king oyster mycelium for this invention? The answer lies in its unique physical specs, such as its ability to grow into a tough network in just under 2 weeks, and the fact that it can handle 0.1 milliamp probes without causing any damage to the sensitive tissues, meaning a robot made using its mycelium would easily last for months. Another intriguing aspect about it is that, unlike the fixed wiring of animal nerves or a central brain, the fungus relies on a distributed intelligence model, as it simply has no central hub. It spreads the information through the entire mycelial body like a wildfire, which is also one of the reasons why it allows the robot to adapt to its environment. The AI translation by converting those signals into binary is one of the main backends that trains Cornell robots to move around, allowing the fungal language to actually accomplish something besides communicating with each other. Similar to UV sensing, researchers even did chemical tests, such as ammonia, that also resulted in spikes. It proves that this phenomenon is not just mere reflexes, but instead the mycelium processes its environment, makes decisions, and even chooses paths. Take a moment and imagine if this invention is scaled up, meaning a world where a new kind of robot takes over. These robots will be self-healing as mycelium regrows, meaning no dead batteries, and all it needs is a rise in spikes, and it starts moving. What if they become rogue? There are billions of mushrooms around the forests in the world, and they're all connected to each other, so just imagine what would happen if they all turned into these hybrid robots. Well, that brings us to the Wood Wide Web. The Wood Wide Web. As the Cornell robots showcase the remarkable capabilities of an individual fungi, you might think that controlling robots is the best they can do, but that's not true, because these fungi don't work solo in nature, but rather in a collective manner and create one of the most extensive networks that are way bigger than our internet, known as the Wood Wide Web. Yes, you heard that right. Even mushrooms have had an internet of their own, which is far more ancient than any tech on our planet, as its threads spread all across the forests and connect every plant with each other. Back in 1997, Suzanne Simard from the University of British Columbia was the one who proved that trees are not individual beings, but in fact, they were all connected with each other through fungi linking their roots like living cables. Mycorrhizal networks, or just the Wood Wide Web, are like a backbone of nature, which is formed by these different species of fungi colonizing over a whopping 80% of land plants worldwide. Two of the main types of fungi that establish this vast network in the forest include the ectomycorrhizae, or EM. This fungus is like a sheath for the tree roots, as it wraps itself around the outside of these roots of big forest trees like pines, oaks, and birches. But the intriguing part is that instead of going inside the tree, this fungus spreads out millions of tiny, hair-like threads, known as the hyphae, into the dirt. Each individual hyphae thread then acts like extra long fingers that make their way into the tiny cracks in the soil to grab water and all the nutrients that the tree needs to survive, and the tree itself can't do this on its own, as its roots are too thick and big to reach them. It creates a partnership similar to what parasites do, but instead of lingering on just to benefit itself, these fungi give the tree what it needs and, in return, get some of its sugar. Then comes the arbuscular mycorrhizas, or AM, which act more like an intruder because they not only wrap around the outside of the roots but also spread inside the plant's cells. And once they're all settled in, they start growing tiny, tree-shaped structures, which are called arbuscules, which act as a high-speed trading floor. This leads to an open trade where the fungus demands sugar from the tree for the minerals like phosphorus that the fungus has collected from the soil. It's a very intricate network, but this internal partnership is what makes every plant thrive in your garden. Now, as discussed earlier, the fungal hyphae connect multiple plants all at once, meaning one tree's root directly connects to a fungus, which then grabs another's root nearby and connects them both. What this creates is called a common mycorrhizal network, or just CMN. Then the resources start flowing in the connection, which leads to even more trees, as big trees provide carbon to seedlings, while the plants that are under stress are provided with phosphorus, creating a coordinated harmony as everything supports each other. This is the thing that intrigued the German forester Peter Wohlleben, who then popularized the name of this network as Wood Wide Web in his book, The Hidden Life of Trees. Now we know that hyphae are what connect the entire forest with one another, but how long does it all stretch? It's believed that one network can easily span hundreds of trees across 9 square kilometers, or probably even more. This was proved by Suzanne Simard in her British Columbia studies, when she used isotopes to precisely track the movement of nutrients through the fungal partners, such as Lacaria. She did this by tagging carbon in one tree, and that allowed her to follow it and discover how sugar traveled underground to the neighboring vegetation, all within days. But food is not the only thing this web carries. In fact, it sends signals throughout the entire network whenever there's a threat emerging, allowing the defense mechanisms to activate immediately. And through this network, even trees can wage war against one another. Yes, even plants have conflicts just like we humans do. These fungi are highly smart, and despite having no central hub, they act together and connect the forests. The sentient processor. The dirt beneath our feet or the grass you stroll upon is way more sensitive than you might have imagined, because that soft ground isn't dead but is exceptionally conscious. It's like a living, pulsing processor, a vast web of neural networks that is made of slime, spores, and fungal threads. They make crucial decisions that greatly affect the trees towering above. And now that we've seen how fungi can control robots by cracking their language using AI, it's time to scale things up to the nature level, where it's no longer about an individual fungus but rather a whole community that currently, without any human intervention, is acting like a massive supercomputer. It's clear that Mycelium not only links plants but can also run programmed codes. Now just imagine those codes are running through hyphae, looping from fungus to tree root and further beyond. This creates an entire signal chain that processes information across trees spread across acres of land. A big and healthy tree senses drought through its fungal links, which leads to the network rerouting the water from wetter soil to another where it's much needed. But this is no favor or charity, but rather an equivalent exchange of carbon for minerals. But if we can easily alter a robot's movement by using an ultraviolet light on a single mycelium, then what if we use the same exact method to fine-tune the entire forest growth by manipulating the network, like slowing down one sapling while accelerating another? As scary as it might sound, the fact is that this entire process perfectly aligns with neural networks as it features fungus, the distributed nodes that have feedback loops, and the ability to constantly adapt without any central command. And despite that, billions of fungi across this network make a collective decision. This is a conscious being, and every step you take means you're stepping down on billions of living circuits, a sentient processor that functions perfectly, despite facing threats of being ripped out of the ground or pests chewing down on them. But no matter what happens, they manage to survive. That wood wide web does exist, and next time you're walking, remember that there's a massive brain underneath. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, And don't forget to ring the bell icon so you won't miss out on new content. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.